Senator Randall, I like your background. Did you take that, or is that a...
No, it's an LSS photo of the Capitol and the...
Yeah, the fountain.
To get a picture of the cherry blossoms because that's so beautiful on campus.
For joining us for our weekly media availability. I'll turn it over to the members for some opening remarks, and then they'll be happy to answer your questions. So go ahead, members.
Thanks for that, Aaron. I'm excited about this last week and this week we've got in front of us. Both bodies issued their operating budgets last week, and really looking at the very same things. I think both budgets are, but we're very proud of all the elements that we've covered. I think Rep. Taylor will talk a little bit about this later on, but especially proud of our investments in housing, both policy and the investments we've made, and in so many other areas, helping our small business community in the state, addressing COVID, which it's become clear we have to be incredibly vigilant on this because we're seeing some spikes in communities right now. So all of these different investments that we're making, including in our budget, one of the things that was really important is to weave our equity work into every portion of our budget. And we feel very proud as House Democrats that we were able to do that. So it was great to roll it out. And then by the end of this week, we will have moved it off the floor of the House, and we will have moved both our capital budgets and our transportation budgets off the floor too. So feeling great about that. And of course, yesterday was a great day also for us. We spent quite a long time on the floor and primarily on Senate Bill 5038. So we're excited that we're going to be able to make sure that the Capitol campus is a safe place for people to be able to come and petition their government for changes, and that safety will be provided across the state of Washington. So we think last week was really good, and this week is going to be really good too. We're excited about our progress. Andy, I don't know if you have things you want to say.
Sure, thank you. Andy Billig, State Senator from Spokane and the Senate Majority Leader, and joined by Senator Randall, our Majority Whip and the Chair of the Higher Education and Workforce Development Committee. Thanks everybody for being here. I agree with everything that the speaker said. We really pleased to roll out the budgets. And you know, we've been talking about from the beginning of session that we want to meet the moment. We want to address this crisis in a way that helps us to recover, not just in terms of healthcare, but in terms of health, but also in terms of long-term sustained economic recovery that works for everyone. And our budgets, both the capital and operating budgets, I think help toward that goal with big investments in childcare and early learning, public health, police accountability and reform, climate resiliency, K-12, tax reform, higher ed, and helping to support the DD community. Really proud of the budgets we put out and looking forward to moving them off the floor. The schedule for the Senate operating budget is in Ways and Means today. And then tentatively scheduled for a floor vote on Thursday. The capital budget already came out of Ways and Means, and we're planning to run the capital budget on the floor tomorrow. And just one other note, as we're obviously excited about the budgets, don't want to forget about the $2.2 billion COVID relief bill that we passed earlier in session. I wanted to mention that today because the $240 million in small business grants applications open today. So for any small business that has been negatively impacted by the pandemic, they can go to commercegrants.com and apply for those grants. And I think it's about a 2-week window, for 10-day to 2-week window when those grant application window is open. So with that, glad to take any questions.
All right, great. We'll first go to Rachel LaCourte with the Associated Press. Rachel, go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon. As the speaker mentioned, the open carry bill was passed out of the House last night. So Senator Billig, how quickly might the Senate take that measure up?
We will probably, I mean, obviously that's a priority bill and something that we're excited to send to the governor's desk. I mean, typically the concurrences start on April, what is it, the 13th or 14th, whatever that Monday is, after the opposite House of Origin cutoff. So even for the highest priority bills, that is typically when we'll start the concurrence process, because otherwise we'll be taking floor time away from House bills and NTIB bills that we may have to do before then.
Rachel, do you have a follow-up?
I do. For the speaker, Senator Billig noted that the Senate is planning to vote on their budget Thursday. When do you think the House budget will be voted on? And then for leadership in both chambers, other than the budgets, any other high priority bills expected to see floor action this week?
Rachel, we're planning for Saturday to be the day that we move the House operating budget, and then Friday evening to be both transportation and capital budgets. And most of this week is really going to be spent. It's fiscal cutoff week, so you're not going to see a lot of floor action because it's our. Many of our members will be in fiscal committee hearing Senate bills in fiscal committee.
Yeah, and we will be on the floor most of the week except for Friday, but just a few hours and really devoted mostly to budgets. We'll certainly have some other bills as we did today, but the budgets will be the focus, including today that we passed the transportation budget, the maintenance level transportation budget with a unanimous vote. So we're really pleased about that.
All right, great. Next we'll go to Sarah Gensler with McClatchy. Sarah, go ahead.
Thanks, Aaron. Senator Dingra's bill addressing the Blake decision. So amid all this other activity, when do you expect, what sort of timeline would you expect that to be on? When would you expect a public hearing, that sort of thing?
I can start with that since it's a Senate bill. So we have that bill will be heard just after fiscal cutoff. I don't know, I have to confirm with Senator Rolfes. I think it may be next Monday, a week from today. If not that day, it would be very soon after that. So that was essentially the soonest that we could do because of the fiscal cutoff. And we want to make sure that we have, it's a very serious issue. It's complicated and we want to get it right. And so we wanted to make sure that we give it enough time for a hearing where we can really get input from everyone and make sure that we do this in a smart way that really addresses substance abuse, which is an addiction. And we know that we can do better than we had done before. And while if we were a little bit, typically a policy this significant, we would have a whole interim to do the planning work. And the Supreme Court has handed us this situation in the middle of a session. So we will do the work that needs to be done, but we want to make sure that we have the time and focus to do that work. So that seems like an appropriate time. It still gives us plenty of time to pass something before the end of session.
And what I'd like to add is that both the House and the Senate have prioritized committees to work on a comprehensive response to the Blake decision. It's more than just filling the hole statutorily. We have to make sure that we're righting the wrongs of the past. And so that means that the folks who have been impacted by the wrongful convictions, if you will, get their LFOs and legal financial obligations in the court process for helping people with their resentencing, as well as the statutory response that you see with Senator Dingra. But at the heart of it is we've got to take care of our folks in the state of Washington who are hurting so bad. You're talking about folks who have substance use disorder. They may have co-occurring challenges with mental health, and they're experiencing some of the toughest parts of their life. And we need to find a response that is really community driven. community driven. That includes law enforcement in the court process, but it also includes being able to call 988. It includes opportunities for community courts, and includes opportunities for folks to call their neighbor to get help for our friends who are in need. And it is a truly bipartisan effort, because it does not have any bounds when you're talking about substance use disorder that's hitting all of our communities throughout the state, both rural, suburban, and our urban areas.
Sarah, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, and so just confining this follow-up to legislation specifically for the possession statute, I had talked to a defense attorney who said she'd kind of like to see actually the legislature take a breather and take a longer time to engage with stakeholders before charting that course forward. Maybe not even doing something this session necessarily. Does that feel like an option if you just confine that to the statute?
I think if we took a no action approach, we would end up having hodgepodge of ordinances. There are already municipalities that have attempted to enact ordinances that could be in conflict with their county or other ordinances, other cities nearby. So this patchwork is not a response to the defelonization of simple possession. So we really need to have a state response to give some certainty to our communities that need action by the legislature.
I just would add on, I think that's totally correct. But that we also know that we might, because of the timing that's involved here, we may not do a complete addressing. It's unlikely that we will completely address anything. When you think about the amount of investment that we will need to make over time in treatment for drug addiction and substance use disorder and behavioral health, both of those things, it is we can never do that in 1 year or in one biennium. So, we'll keep on. We will make progress this year. I think we're very committed to trying to make progress this year. Will we complete everything this year? Likely not.
All right, next up, we'll go to Rich Smith with The Stranger. Rich, go ahead.
Can you hear me all right? Oh, there we go. So I'd just like an update on the conversation around SB 5126, the Climate Commitment Act. Where are negotiations at it there? And what are some sticking points? How soon until it sees a floor vote? And to what extent are you all thinking about it as part of a grand bargain to get the large transportation revenue package through?
Senator Randall, you want to take that a bit?
Sorry, let me unmute. Sure. I think, starting with the importance of the transportation package, I think we in the House and Senate and, colleagues across both sides of the aisles really share a feeling about how important investments in our infrastructure are. Now is a really urgent time for us to think about, investing in those community projects that are in dire need of those investments, thinking about the Columbia River Bridge, thinking about our ferries, our maintenance and preservation, Gorst in my community, which is in desperate need of investments and repair. And, over and over in all of our conversations, we talk about the need to not just build the way we've always built, but also invest in environmental stewardship so that we are preparing for a greener, healthier future. That's why I think you're hearing more of this conversation about our grand bargain, because we do want to invest in a cleaner Washington and the ability for folks to move around safely in our communities and bring good local jobs that are, removing fish passage barriers while we're restoring highways and, digging once to invest in broadband too, right? This has the ability for us to really inject much needed resources in our economy and our communities. I'll let Speaker Jenkins, I think, talk about where the bill is in the House, but those are sort of the driving values that have really centered us in this work.
That's great. And I'll just mention, thank you, Senator Rendell, and I just mentioned the schedule for it for the floor. We're focused on budgets for this week, as we mentioned. So I would anticipate after the budgets go that would be high on the priority list.
And I think, you know, the agreement was that the Senate would start with this bill, so we're waiting for it to come over. The members are talking. I know that the two chairs of the primary committees that this comes out of, the policy committees, have been working together a lot on this bill. And I don't think Representative Fye, who's chair of the Transportation Committee, would let me get off of this call without saying, yes, it is absolutely necessary for funding of our transportation package.
Rich, do you have a follow?
Yeah, just about the Blake, or it arrives from the last question. Speaker Jenkins, what sort of stuff do you think might not get completed with regard to the Blake decision this year? What might get completed? I'm thinking just in terms of maybe not everything around recovery and treatment funding gets done this year, but do you think that there's going to be funding for the courts and for the DOC and for prosecuting attorney's office, just in terms of dealing with past cases? Just interested on what stuff seems like much bigger lift and what stuff can get done.
Rich, I mean, I think you've kind of answered your own question. Actually, it's really more that you know, we don't even actually really know. We haven't fully vetted how much the LFOs that Rep. Taylor has talked about, the court funding for resentencing, things like that. We will have funding for that this year, but is it the full amount of funding? I don't know that we'll even be able to get to the bottom of what is the full amount, right, in this year because of when this decision came out. Same thing with treatment for substance use disorder. I think we will, as you see in the House budget, we make really huge, probably historic investments in that area. Is it enough? Probably not. And the other thing is, treatment in this area really has evolved. If you think about what we would have invested in 10 years ago versus now, the success of medication-assisted treatment and things like that, we continue to learn and evolve our treatment models for substance use at a very rapid pace. So those are going to be things that we will continue to watch and build on over time.
Okay, up next we will go to Joe O'Sullivan with the Seattle Times. Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, Senator Billig, you made it sound pretty definitive the Climate Commitment Act is going to get to the Senate floor. Are you going to put that on the floor even absent a grand bargain? And we've watched the debate on clean fuels and large climate legislation like this go to the end of the session a few years in a row now without a grand bargain. Are you committed to getting either of those done as sort of necessary to conclude the session?
So on the cap and invest bill, we do want to pass that off the Senate floor. I mean, we haven't, it's still in rules, so we have to get it out of rules and then we'll caucus on it and vote count it. But assuming we have the votes, we would like to pass it over to the House. It is a fairly significant piece of legislation. I don't think it's been in the House before, so I don't think it's something that we can just kind of spring on them at the last minute. I think they need the time. I don't want to speak for Speaker Jenkins, but
thank you, Senator Billig. I appreciate that.
Yeah. I do think it's reasonable that they would have some time for some hearings. And again, I mean, that's always what we do, but I think in this case, with such a substantial bill being seen for the first time, it seems reasonable that we would send it over with some time, even if we don't know all the other pieces of the grand bargain being in place.
Joe, do you have a follow?
Yeah, I'm sorry, somebody may have already asked this, but with the open carry bill demonstrations going back to the Senate, is the Senate interested in moving forward with the House version that contains the emergency clause?
You know what, I did not have a chance to look at the amendments, but I know our teams have been in close contact, and I know it's a high priority for our caucus and our members and for the state. So I would imagine that we are going to figure it out fairly easily, but I'm not 100% sure on every amendment that got adopted.
Yeah, and I just want to add on to this. The State Patrol actually asked us to add an emergency clause, in large part due to the violence that has been seen around the Capitol, on and around the Capitol campus over the course of the last year. Not just open carry, which is what this bill is about, but we've had shootings. And folks be gravely injured in those, and so we wanted to be responsive to the request of the State Patrol.
Okay, and up next we'll go to Jerry Cornfield of the Everett Herald. Jerry, go ahead.
The first question, I guess, to Senator Billig, just the low carbon fuel standard it's set to be exec tomorrow, but has the leadership decided if you're going to send it to the Transportation Committee or straight to rules?
I think that it's still being worked on. The substitute or amendments are still being worked on in Ways and Means. So I think whether it, what day it gets exec and where it goes next, I don't think has been determined yet. I think it, but everybody is at the table talking, and it's definitely a bill that will get to rules, or at least that's my goal, is to get it to rules, whether it makes a stop in transportation or not. But there is progress and negotiations being made, and I expect if it's not, what's today, Monday, yeah, so it could get exec in Ways Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday.
Jerry, do you have a follow-up?
Sure. It does sound like you're still trying to make it part of the grand bargain, and whether or not it actually falls out if you get the other pieces. But my question is maybe just to clarify on the Blake decision, Representative Taylor, you said it looks like it'll be a bipartisan solution, but in past press conferences, we've been told only Democrats in the House and Senate have been at the table working on the solution. So I wondered if you could speak to where is the bipartisanship happening? If it's only Democrats, is that equitable to only have one party develop the policy that will come out of the legislature?
Understandably, my understanding is that there is a Republican who is co-sponsoring the bill with Manka Dhingra, and that we are, communicating with our Republican colleagues, and it's not to say that they're not paying attention to this issue. And what I mean by bipartisan is the fact that we are all committed to getting this resource back out into the community, and whether they ultimately vote for the package that we believe is the best for our community, that's up to them. I'm new to the legislature, and I've seen them do amazing things, and I have faith, but I'm sure my colleagues here will say, well, welcome to the game, how things actually work down here in Olympia. But at the end of the day, I will tell you that Republicans are definitely impacted by this enormous issue, and to do nothing, I don't think is something that's within their framework either.
Yeah, thank you. And I just, in the Senate, I do believe it's bipartisan. Whether the ultimate vote and ultimate bill that comes out will be bipartisan, I can't tell you for sure, but I think it will be. There is at least one Republican co-sponsor on Senator Dhingra's bill, but more than that is the discussions that have been going on across the aisle. And Senator Dhingra is very engaged. And I've heard, Senator Patton talk about his interest in trying to work across the aisle for a solution. And I think that there's a lot of common ground to figure out a way that helps keep our communities safe, that helps keep everybody in our communities safe, while treating the underlying causes of substance abuse disorder. And look, we have a chance here to do it better. And it's not something we thought we were going to get to work on this year, but we have a chance to do something really significant to help improve our public safety, but to do it in a way with a public health approach to public safety. And we know if we do that, we'll actually get better results. And I think there's definitely a path to a bipartisan solution.
Yeah, I just would add, I agree with Senator Billy. We have a real chance to fix a broken system here. And that's what we want to do. In the House, the Republicans in the House have filed 4 bills, and Rep. Taylor sits on our group in the House that's working on solutions to the Blake decision. And I've asked them to look at those Republican bills and to see what kind of good approaches are in there. I would say, there's already one approach. Representative Griffey's bill essentially lifts up Representative Davis's bill from earlier this session, right? Real bipartisanship there, and puts all the contents or many of the contents of that into his bill. So, obviously something for us to continue looking at and working on together.
Okay, up next, we'll go to Austin Jenkins of the Northwest News Network. Austin, go ahead.
Hi, thanks. Speaker Jenkins, you spoke early on about the equity focus in the budget. There are 2 items that I haven't heard much, if any, talk about here, and I'm just curious why not, or if I've missed them. One is the issue of land reparations to tribes in Washington, which I know has been considered elsewhere, and then also legislation to acknowledge the generational impact of slavery and or to even explore monetary reparations.
And your question is, Austin?
Why have those been considered, and if so, in what context, and if not, why not?
I mean,
given the focus on equity.
I don't think that I didn't hear from the budget team that those were considerations in the budget. So I don't know for sure the answer to that. But I think when we look at issues running throughout the budget, we're looking at bringing equity to our K-12 education, to early learning and childcare, on homelessness and housing issues, public health, behavioral health. Every topic that you see, I think, in our budget, you will see equity elements woven into that. And this, I think, goes some, and I'd invite Rep. Taylor to talk about this if she wants to, but this goes some to us really seeing that there are current impacts that are happening to people right now that we can make incredible progress on with the federal package and the state budget that we've got. We're very focused on that. So Rep. Taylor, if you have things you want to add, I welcome you to do that.
I'll speak from my direct involvement in the housing space. I mean, one of the most significant impacts that we really need to address is, the disproportionate impact on evictions and homelessness on communities of color. And by having the eviction moratorium, and we need to make sure people stay in their homes so that they can access their opportunities for jobs, access their opportunities to engage in the public health response to COVID. And many of these folks are part of the essential workforce that have been left out of the conversation on resources in terms of economic recovery. And so when you lift up folks who are part of the body politic, the working class folks, the folks who, go to work every single day, it helps the entire economy, as you can see with a revenue forecast that was a lot better than we expected. And in particular, let me hone in on the housing packages. We're investing more than $1 billion on rental assistance, because we do have a significant portion of our residents in Washington State who are renters and need that help and have been impacted by the work slowdowns and layoffs because of COVID. And it is, COVID revealed so many inequities in so many systems, things that I know that the Black community and communities of color knew about for a very, very long time and have been screaming from the mountaintop about. And so having representation, 1/3 of the Democratic caucus is members of color. We have a perspective that we're bringing to the table and an accountability with our partners in the legislature. And accountability. So when you see things like just cause evictions, and the Senate Bill 5160 that is talking about how we're going to deploy resources for mediation on preserving tenancies, and lawyers when tenants don't have lawyers, but landlords have access to lawyers, and other resources that preserve housing. You start with our base and then and stabilize communities and reduce the potential for displacement, those are things that can be generational, create generational impact. And we build on that and build on it and build on it. If we're not going to solve all of our racial disparities in this year, in this legislation, we're going to continue to work on it, and our communities are going to hold us accountable to continue to work on it and bring these issues to the forefront every year until it is fully addressed.
Austin, do you have a follow?
Briefly on Blake, I know there's a lot of focus on simple drug possession, but what about people involved in the drug trade? There are certainly those who would argue that there's a lot of disproportionality there, and that trade may be fueled by unequal opportunities to other parts of the illicit economy. Was there a focus or an interest here on also addressing the people involved in the selling of drugs, not just the buying?
So I think Blake is an opportunity to bring together a formalized group that can truly address all aspects of the war on drugs. The criminal justice response is simply not working. And so we have to look at it, but we cannot do it in 20 days. If we do it in 20 days, we could have unintended consequences that could be worse for communities of color. So we want to have a way for the community as a whole to participate in the process of making what could be the possibility of the future. So, for my response to that is that, this is the beginning of the conversation. The Blake decision ripped the Band-Aid. We're moving pretty fast on it. We know that these conversations are happening around the nation and globally, if you will. So we are moving forward with bringing community into this conversation and working on this over multiple sessions.
Okay, thank you. That's the end of our questions today. I will now throw it back to the members for some closing remarks.
Well, I'll start.
Oh,
What I want to say is that the House Democrats and the Senate Democrats wanted to meet the moment of the COVID response. And it wasn't just the public health response, it is the economic recovery, lifting folks up, the working families tax credit, for example, making sure that we're keeping folks housed, making sure that we're holding our public health response on vaccination and access to that, making sure that we're working on the employment security issue that has been so hard for those who have not been able to access their unemployment insurance. We are trying to meet the moment, and in many ways, we're finding that there's new connection points. Let's talk about broadband. Very broad in terms of bipartisan support. And the question is, how do we deploy it with the resources that we have, and what new resources do we need to bring to bear for our state? So I'm just excited about how we're responding in a way that is just for our communities, in a way that takes into account that we need to keep this earth. So the environment is part of that discussion, and we want to make sure that we do it in a way that is equitable. So we weave all of these policies through everything that we do in every way that we live. And I'm excited to be a part of this legislative group, because they're doing some really important things and having difficult conversations that are not always comfortable. And we're not always in the right in terms of the answer right now, but we're continuing to work with community to ensure we get to the best place possible.
I just want to echo so much of what Rep. Taylor has said and what we've been able to talk about today about meeting the moment. I also think that it's really exciting when you get to dig through our budgets to see some of the community-driven priorities that are rooted in equity and are rooted in recovery, but were also crises before the pandemic, shone a spotlight on them and their impact on our communities. Like, I was a little surprised to not hear Austin ask us about buying off the no paid services wait list. I know that's an area where we've done a lot of work trying to target attention onto the fact that we haven't been planning for a community of neighbors with disabilities and creating a system of support that will meet folks' needs. This is about investing in the everyday needs of Washingtonians that have gone unmet for so long. We're investing money in our Washington Health Plan Finder to buy down those premiums for individuals who have been trying to stay insured but just couldn't afford it, no matter how many other health policies that we pass to make it more affordable, more easily accessible. At the end of the day, for a lot of folks, it comes down to money and being able to buy that health insurance. That working families tax credit that we've heard about. This is about getting cash into the hands of folks who need it to not only pay their bills, but to inject money in our economy. It's investing back in our recovery and early learning. This is something that I know Senator Billig has been working on for his entire time in the legislature. I've gotten the great pleasure of working alongside our colleagues who have been doing this work for a long time, including Senator Wilson, whose entire career has been about creating childcare opportunities and really creating a space for belonging and support for our littlest learners. And we heard over and over this year that women, by and large, are opting out of employment because they just can't afford childcare. So many of our job loss numbers are moms. And that is a problem that we could have fixed a long time ago, perhaps, but we are fixing it now by investing really important money into families who need it most, who are ready to get back to work and contribute to the economy, and our kids are ready to learn. So really exciting stuff happening in the House and Senate budgets, and I can't wait to see how we continue to perfect those policies and get to the finish line together.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.